Welcome to this episode of Eureka, and in this episode, we are going to meet one of the proudest son of India, Dr. Chandrakant Pandav. He is the recent recipient of Padma Award of 2021. This January, on the Republic Day, has been awarded this greatest award of India, and we are thankful to him for accepting to be in this program. Sir, thank you for being in this program. But before we continue this conversation, let's watch a quick look at his brief profile. After watching the profile, we'll continue this conversation.
Dr. Chandrakant S. Pandav is a former community medicine head at the All India Institute of Medical Sciences and is popularly known as the Iodine Man of India for his work in the elimination of iodine deficiency disorders. He will be conferred with the Padma Shri this year. Dr. Pandav has devoted long years of exemplary service to a noble and critical cause, the elimination of iodine deficiency disorders in India and South Asia. He is also closely involved with India's ambitious National Nutrition Mission. Dr. Pandav completed his medical studies at the All India Institute of Medical Sciences, New Delhi, and biostatistics from McMaster University in Hamilton, Canada, before embarking on what has been a distinguished career in community medicine. He later served in different capacities at various national and global organizations like AIMS, UNICEF, and also the World Health Organization. Among his many awards and honors, Dr. Pandav is the first recipient of Professor V. Ramalinga Swamy Prize for the year 1976.
Sir, thank you for being in the show. It was a very wonderful, very good opportunity that you have spared some time. You are called as Iodine Man of India. So I'm going to start from that point. I mean, if you look at iodine, we need something like about 0.15 milligram per day. I mean, that's a kind of amount, very small amount. So why that such a nutrient which we require at very low quantity? Why that becomes a huge challenge, and particularly in India?
The daily requirement of iodine is 150 micrograms per person.
Yeah.
So that quantity to communicate to a simple person is that it fits on the tip of a hair.
Yeah.
That's the quantity we require every day. But the most important thing I want to emphasize is that we need to take that quantity every day.
Ah.
That's the important thing. There is a storage of iodine in the thyroid gland which can last for about 6 months. But it's important that we take that 150 micrograms, which fits on the tip of the hair every day. Now, the obvious question is, it's called a micronutrient. It's called micronutrient because you require it in very micro quantities.
Yes.
Now, the next obvious question is, what is the importance of this iodine? Iodine is required for making thyroid hormones, T3 and T4, triiodothyronine and thyroxine. Now, what is the role of iodine and thyroxine in the body? It has got 4 important roles to play.
Okay.
First, it's linked with the physical development of the human body. Second, it is linked with the maintenance of body temperature. And the third, it's linked with the mental development.
Yeah.
In fact, the most important role iodine and thyroxine has in the human body is linked with the mental development. Very, very important. Very important.
No, so you say that the quantity that we need is so small, so the body also has a store for 6 months. But then how does this small quantity, iodine, has such a huge impact on our mental capacities? How it actually impairs our mental faculties if right quantities are not available in our body?
For that, we need to understand the development of human brain.
Yes.
The development of human brain starts from the 3rd month of pregnancy.
Okay.
And by the time we reach 3rd year of your life, 90% of the human brain development is complete. And by the end of 7 years, the almost total human brain development is complete. What is the exact role? Actually, when you have these neurons, they are branches. So if you don't have iodine in the adequate quantities, the branches don't happen. There is no branching.
Okay.
What we call as dendrites, there is no arborization of the dendrites that is taking place. If there are less branches, it gives a less space for providing what you call as a substrate for mental development. So the more the branches, more the connectivity, the better is the brain function. That's the precise role in simple language.
Okay.
So
Basically, I mean, of course, we have all heard that the neurons have this dendrites, which are like fingers coming out of it, or hair-like structure, which are coming out of it. They go and connect to next neuron. That kind of connection is what is the memory or brain function. And in
yeah,
absence of iodine, you are saying that those connections don't happen. So that's how the
yeah.
mental difficulties take place, right? I mean, that's what
I,
happens.
I
Yeah.
I would like to emphasize this point again. The
Uh-huh.
more the branching, the more the opportunities for connection. So it's all
Yes.
about connectivity. The more connection, it forms as a substrate for your brain development and brain functioning.
Yeah. Sir, you also pointed out that it needs a very small quantity, as you pointed out very figuratively, very interesting way that it's just a tip of our hair. That's what is the quantity that we require in our everyday intake. But we eat quite a lot of stuff. Don't iodine come through that into our body? Why we have this iodine deficiency? For example, in India, of course, before you people intervened and then set it right. But before that, why we were having such a huge problem of iodine deficiency in India?
I think it's a very fundamental and an important question that you asked. In fact, I must say that you're asking me very pointed questions.
Yes, sir.
So, so that's wonderful interacting with you. What we must understand that iodine is present in the top layer of the soil.
Ah.
We go back to 10,000 years back, that
Mm.
was the age of glaciation.
Mm.
And iodine is easily soluble in water. So
Mm.
what has happened is the soil has been deprived of the iodine which is present in the top layer of the soil.
Okay.
And therefore, the food crops that are grown into that soil contain less iodine. So
Mm.
iodine deficiency is a geochemical problem of the soil.
Okay.
It's very, very vital to register this particular fact.
Ah.
More recently, it is the deforestation that has taken place. As a result of deforestation, there is flooding that is taking place, and the rivers are changing their course over a period of time. In fact, the best example of river changing its course is Kosi River in Bihar.
Yeah.
For a period of time, it has, I think, moved about 40 to 50 kilometers away.
Yes, sir.
So more and more area is getting depleted of iodine in the soil.
Mm.
So it's also a very important environmental problem as well. It's
Mm-hmm.
not only age of glaciation, but also more recently deforestation leading to flooding, rivers changing course, more areas getting under iodine deficiency. So it's also not only geochemical, but also an environmental problem linked to deforestation, flooding, rivers changing course. So there is
That's a very interesting point. This is where I want to ask you one question. See, many people kind of make a kind of argument that such and such a fruit is iodine rich, such and such a vegetable is iodine rich. But then, as you pointed out, if those vegetables are grown in those soils deficient in iodine, obviously they won't have the iodine that we require every day, right? I mean, that's also becomes a problem. Yeah.
That's also the fundamental point. Actually, you should know what iodine takes you is to the origin of many things in life, and one
Mm.
of them is the soil on which it is grown, the food
Mm.
crops.
Mhm.
But the world's richest source of iodine are the seaweeds. Why seaweeds? Because they have inherent biological capacity to concentrate iodine, and
Okay.
therefore sea fish becomes the world's natural resource, best resource of iodine. But
Uh,
also in the fish, it is the coral fish because
uh,
seaweeds are located in the coral.
uh,
The deep water fish, as compared to the coral fish or what we call as reef fish,
uh,
contains less iodine than the reef
okay.
fish.
Mhm.
So in nature, it's a very interesting story
Yeah.
because the inherent capacity of the seaweeds to concentrate iodine, the
Mm.
coral reef fish that feeds on iodine is the richest source of iodine. And even the fish, it is
Mm.
the thyroid gland of the fish which is richest because obviously the iodine is stored in the thyroid
Yeah.
gland. So in the
Uh,
deep water, as compared to the reef fish, it has got less iodine than
mm.
the reef fish.
Okay,
that's-
so this whole thing, the way the iodine is concentrated because of nature, the way, for example, we have depleted the topsoil through intensive agriculture, iodine deficiency has occurred in various places. That's a natural cause, and as you also pointed out, due to our deforestation, there is also an anthropogenic cause for iodine deficiency. But I also hear that, for example, breastfeeding women, for example, have a tendency to lose iodine. Am I right? I mean, is there also that, let's say, a specific time in our life that we lose iodine or we lack iodine the way that we need?
this is again a very important myth that is being circulated.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, after the thyroid gland, the
Mm.
next organ that has iodine is the breast milk.
Okay.
So the breast milk is the single most important, what we call the other important nomenclature for the breast is it's called external placenta.
Ah.
External placenta.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
So the next important source of iodine in humans is the breast milk. So it's important, again, you analyze the importance of breastfeeding in the children. In fact, we strongly recommend that breastfeeding should be continued till the age of 2 years or 3 years,
Yes.
if that is possible.
So this also brings a question that suppose if you are a breastfeeding mother, then the iodine stress on you will be more, right? I mean, because you need to
Right,
consume iodine for you and also for the baby, right?
that's right. So obviously the very interesting question you're reading from one question to another. I think it's like the water that is flowing in the river from the
Yes.
origin to the sea. So obviously, the iodine requirement of the pregnant and lactating mother actually is twice 250 micrograms per lactating mother or per breastfeeding mother,
Mhm.
almost twice.
Yeah.
So it's important. Actually, that is the main crux of this problem. The, the age group that is at the highest risk to iodine deficiency are pregnant mothers, most important, number one. Number two are lactating mothers.
Okay.
So the entire focus of the program should be to ensure that the pregnant mothers and lactating mothers get adequate iodine in their diet.
That's very, very nice, sir. I mean, and in India, we found a very innovative solution to address this issue by fortifying salt. So, can you tell us about how this whole idea of fortifying salt so that the iodine salt becomes the norm? How did you come about and why we chose this method to address this very important question of securing the mental health of population in India?
The question is very simple. Which is one commodity that we take every day? Which is the one commodity which we take in a fixed quantity? Which is one commodity which is taken by the population groups, whether you're taking in urban area, rural area, whether you're rich or poor, whether it's winter or summer? That's one commodity that strikes your mind is this salt.
Yeah.
And since I mentioned right at the beginning of the program, you got to take iodine in required quantities every day. So you can't ask for a better vehicle than the salt. So salt actually is the jewel of the sea. And this jewel of the sea, when it is iodized with iodine, becomes the second jewel, the shining jewel for the human beings.
Very, very, very nicely you put, sir. I mean, and I think that's a very important point. So, one question about this iodine. You are called as iodine man, which means that you led the very important movement in India to ensure that the fortified salt is what is used. So, can you tell us about your journey of ensuring that this fortified salt is what is sold in India? What is that you faced around that time? How did you make this argument and won the argument in social sphere?
There are two important things I've been very blessed to have. One is to be at the All India Institute of Medical Sciences, New Delhi. The institute was established by an act of parliament way back in 1956.
Yes, sir.
And it is here I would like to pay my tribute to Rajkumari Amrutkar, our India's first female cabinet minister, our first health minister. So Rajkumari's gift to the nation is the All India Institute of Medical Sciences, New Delhi.
Yeah.
I consider it as a blessing to be in this institute since 1971, and I spent 45 years. The epigenetic changes in Dr. Pandav is AIIMS. Every DNA and every RNA of Dr. Pandav has only one code, that's called the AIMS. So that's the environment, enabling environment. That is the Gurukul system that I was fortunate to study. The second important, and I also want to share the secret of my life, is the Guru Tattva. I've been very, very fortunate to have gurus, good gurus, starting with my parents. Mother is the first truth of life. Mother is also the first guru.
Yes, sir.
So they were responsible. My parents were responsible for the sanskars I had. And I want to remind you here what my parents told me, that if you live for yourself, you're as good as dead. And if you live for others, that's the life you lead. So that was the foundation. There are two kinds of teachers I met in life. Those are mentors and those are tormentors.
Okay.
I was very fortunate to have Dr. Ramalinga Swami as my mentor. I wanted to be a neurosurgeon. Actually, I joined medicine to become a neurosurgeon. The year was 1978. There was a cyclone in Orissa, very devastating cyclone.
Yeah.
Ramalinga Swami called me to his office. He used to call me Chandrakant. What do you want to become? I said, I want to become a neurosurgeon. I had already lined up a fellowship to go to Karolinska Institute in Stockholm.
Okay.
The world's place where the Nobel Award Prize ceremony is being held.
Yeah. Yeah.
He said, you please go to Orissa and work in the cyclone hit areas. India does not require neurosurgeons. India requires public health experts.
Okay.
So I was again a very important turning point in my life, that I got a mentor like Professor Ramalinga Swami. So that's how I made my journey in 1978. I went to Orissa, took up MD in community medicine as an important subject for my post-graduation rather than going to neurosurgery. Then the question, we went on a strike that the thesis should not be compulsory in AIMS. And I was the vice president of the Resident Doctors Association. So I was leading the agitation. But then comes another mentor, Professor Lalit Nath, who was the head of the Department of Community Medicine. He said, Chandrakant, I don't care whether the institute has thesis or not, but if you want to pass your MD in 2 years' time or make it a 5-year program, you have to do thesis or dissertation, no matter what you call. So that was the second mentor I met in my life. And I took endemic goiter in Delhi as my thesis topic.
Okay.
Here I want to mention two more mentors for me. Dr. N. Kochupile, Department of Endocrinology and Metabolism, and Dr. Madhu Karmarkar.
Okay.
So these four mentors played an important role, and that's how I started my first work on goiter. And I went to Kalkaji and Chandni Chowk and reported the prevalence of endemic goiter in Delhi. That led to the new concept of extra Himalayan foci of endemic goiter. So nobody suspected that even city of Delhi would have goiter. Then came the Indian Council of Medical Research Study, where we carried out studies in 12 states of India and reported more and more pockets of endemic goiter. From the traditional concept of Himalayan endemic goiter, we moved on to the extra Himalayan foci of endemic goiter. That was my first contribution. The second thing came to the severity of goiter. I went to the Open University of Uttar Pradesh and Bihar and implemented field-based neonatal screening for hypothyroidism. And we reported the prevalence of hypothyroidism from 8% to 13%, which was about 400 times higher than those countries which have successfully eliminated iodine deficiency. So here we had two situations. The problem was almost universal in India, and it was a serious problem. Because the single most important cause of brain damage is neonatal hypothyroidism. And this occurs because there is deficiency of iodine in the diet.
Okay.
So we took these findings to the late Prime Minister, Mrs. Indira Gandhi.
Ah.
We made a film. Will the
Okay.
salt reach Padrona?
Mm.
Padrona is the district in UP, northeastern part of India.
Mm-hmm.
And the iodine deficiency was so severe that
Okay.
not only goats and cows had, but I saw goiter even in the birds.
Oh, oh.
That was
Okay.
the severity of iodine deficiency.
Uh-huh.
So one picture is better than 1,000 words. And it's
Yes.
interesting, this film, Will the Salt Reach Padrona, was supported by Indian Council of Medical Research.
Okay.
It's a very strange event, and it
Uh,
became a film producer. That was also the first landmark.
mm.
And when Mrs. Gandhi saw this film, she asked us, tell us, Dr. Pandav, what should we do?
Mm.
I said, Madam, please go for universal authorization.
Mm-hmm.
That's how in 1983 we communicated research findings to the highest person in the country, the
Okay.
Prime Minister. And again, this meeting took place in Indian Council of Medical Research.
Mm.
Mrs. Indira Gandhi used to review national health programs every 6 months.
Mm.
And who was the director of ICMR? It was Dr. Ramalingam Swami.
Yeah.
After retiring from AIMS in
Yeah.
1979, he moved to ICMR as the Director General of ICMR. You see how the history has been very helpful
Yes.
in my journey. At important turning points, I had the best of gurus in the world. So that's why I say I'm very blessed to have gurus who have been mentors. Occasionally in private, they would also torment me.
That's part of the game. Our earlier discussion. See, with the 1980s, I mean, you said that we took this decision of fortifying the salt with iodine. So, if one looks at this period from 1980s to 2020, it's about 4 decades. If you can look at some numbers, what would be the number of people whom we would have saved from, let's say, iodine deficient disease? What was the kind of prevalence of it earlier? What is it now?
This journey has been of 40 years.
Mhm.
I was Arjun Pandav, if I can say that, when it comes to iodine. Not the iodine man, but Arjun Pandav of Mahabharata.
Yeah.
I saw the right of the bird.
Oh.
I have devoted my entire life to chasing this story.
Yeah.
And I'm very blessed that I got this opportunity to in this lifetime because I was obeying my parents' samskara. If you live for yourself, you are as good as dead. If you live for others, you are living a good life. So I'm most grateful to my parents for laying the foundation of this sanskara. The numbers. Today, 93% of the country's population, that is out of 1.38 billion,
Mm.
1.25 billion is 93% that is consuming iodized salt.
Very good.
The number of countries in the world is 213.
Mhm.
The number of countries which are United Nations member is 193.
Mm.
So I did a small calculation to come possibly for an interview
Mm.
that the population of 193 countries is
Okay.
1.25 billion.
Uh-huh.
So we are actually in numbers covering the entire United Nations countries.
Yes.
And 93%, that's incredible. We started with less than 5% in 83
Mhm.
before universal salt iodization.
Mm.
And today, because of two important surveys that were carried out, the India Iodine Survey and the Comprehensive National Nutrition Survey, you will be very happy to know and very proud, we have the best database in the world.
Okay.
The best database in the world. But who reports it?
Mm.
Because it is not a clinical problem.
Mm.
People will talk about heart surgeries, brain surgeries, kidney surgeries, but nobody talks of the silent epidemic that we have been able to manage
Managed.
since last 40 years. So in a way, I consider once again fortunate that the government of India has been very kind enough to recognize my contribution and give me this civilian honor. Two things.
Oh.
One is I must publicly acknowledge my wife, Smita, who herself was a biochemist, and she did
Okay.
the reason, but we're a good team. while she was the boss at home, I was boss at the work. So I must recognize my wife Smita Pandav's name and two of my children, Rutvik and Rujuta, whom they saw me as a distant father. Most of the time, I was traveling almost for 200 days in 365 days.
Yeah.
I also want to acknowledge the presence of my another guru. I had a Labrador by the name Master Shunti.
Mhm.
He lived for 17 years. When others were asleep, he used to give me company at night to make sure that I don't sleep. I must acknowledge Master Shunti, my Labrador also. That's number one from the family side.
Yes, sir.
Number two, the AIMS,
Hmm.
the best institute in the world, the Gurukul system. And number three, I couldn't have done this all alone. It was the team.
Yes.
It was the team. They did the work. We had an excellent understanding. They did the work, and I talked about it.
Yes.
So I'm grateful.
That's a very nice thing, sir. I mean, thank you for being with us in this show. It was a very wonderful conversation, and we also get to know that how nation things happen behind the scene, but having a huge impact on nation's health. Keep watching Eureka. We'll come back with another interesting conversation next week, same time.
इस संवाद के लिए आपको धन्यवाद.
Thanks, sir. It was very, very nice, sir. Very interesting talk, sir. Thank you.